I'm Sensei Alex Kakuyo, regular contributor here at Buddhistdoor Global, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of The Ordinary Buddhist. The title of today's talk is Imperfect Buddhas. But before we get into that, I'll remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. The other day, I was sitting in the park enjoying the quintessential perfect afternoon. It was warm, but not too warm. There were clouds in the sky, but still plenty of blue. I had my favorite drink in my hand, a almond milk latte, and I could hear the birds singing all around me. And I was sitting there thinking about how perfect the afternoon was when suddenly something wet hit my thigh. And I was confused because it definitely wasn't supposed to rain that day. And then I looked down at the park bench and noticed white paste. The telltale sign that it was bird poop and not rain that had hit my leg. Sure enough, when I looked up, there was a pigeon sitting on a light post, and the bench I was sitting on was perfectly positioned for that pigeon to drop his payload. And of course, it wasn't a big deal. I just laughed a little bit, went home, changed clothes, but it did make me think about our conception of perfect in Western culture and how that intersects with our Buddhist practice. Because in the West, we essentially believe that perfection means to be without flaws. So we have an arbitrary list of criteria, and we check off those criteria as we meet them, either for a person or a place or a thing. And if we fall short, we strive to fill in that gap. And this isn't bad per se. There are times in life where we need to be very exacting in how we approach things. For an aircraft, for example, the wings have to be shaped just right. The engine has to function in a very specific way in order for us to fly through the air. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. However, when we apply that thinking to other parts of our lives, to ourselves, for example, or to other people, it can become very stressful and frankly unnecessary. The perfection required for an airplane is different than what's required for a person or a pet or a life. So to account for that, Buddhism has a slightly different idea of perfection that doesn't exist in opposition to the Western view, but rather in complement to it. We believe that things are perfect when they are complete, when there's nothing missing. Now, you might think that, well, because in Buddhism we practice acceptance, that means that everything is complete, thus everything is perfect. And you'd be right. Everything is perfect. And that's why Reverend Shunryu Suzuki famously told his students, "You're all perfect, and you all have work to do." Because he understood that they were perfectly complete in the fact that they were Buddha. But at the same time, going back to the Western view, they had some criteria in their practice that they hadn't quite hit yet. Their imperfection as human beings existed within the perfection of their Buddha nature. In the same way that the perfection of an airplane exists within the imperfection of us having to run across the airport so we don't miss said plane. Again, they don't exist in contrast to each other, but as complements. I've never looked at a flower and thought it was less beautiful because the petals weren't perfectly symmetrical. I've never enjoyed the shade of a tree any less because the trunk wasn't perfectly straight. Both things are true at the same time. The trunk of the tree is imperfect, but the shade is perfect. The flower petals are imperfect, but the flower as a whole is perfect. Both lacking and complete at the same time. And when we understand this, we understand that the perfection of our lives exists not in spite of our imperfections, but in a certain way because of them. Because it's those imperfections that make us complete, that make us who we are. More than that, they give us something to do. Life would be boring if we had everything, every check mark, every second of the day. The fact is, as humans, we enjoy having something to strive for. The difference is that the Buddhist conception of perfection also exists within the realm of grace. We are Buddhists no matter what we do. So we can work, we can strive to deal with the places we are lacking without fear of shortcoming, without fear of falling short. Because we know that we are accepted and we are loved exactly as we are. Amitabha.